Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Monday came and went, and Justin Fields is gone. So what do the Steelers do? Is it Russell Wilson? Is it Aaron Rodgers? We talk about that with Nick Farabaugh, PennLive.com. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, bringing you daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find my work and read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can watch my show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on here on YouTube or listen to it on your favorite podcasting apps. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday through Friday episodes. So, as I said before, we're joined by Nick Farabaugh, PennLive.com. He's a Steelers reporter there. I'm a Steelers reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Nick, Monday came and went. And boy, I have to say I'm surprised. Not even just that Justin Fields is with the New York Jets, but because we still, as of 11:04 p.m. Monday evening, as we record this episode, we do not know who the Steelers quarterback is going to be next year because they haven't signed anyone. Sam Darnold is with the Seahawks. Justin Fields is with the Jets. At this point, the top three options that I think that are still on the table for the Steelers are Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Daniel Jones. And to be honest, Nick, that sounds very morbid to a lot of Steelers fans. If you were had to choose right now, who would be the one you would choose personally, and who do you think the one that it is going to end up being if you were to pick from those three?
All right, I'll start off with the one I think it's going to be. I think we are on a collision course towards this being Aaron Rodgers. I think that's where this is heading.
God help us.
What would I do? Wow, what a question you're asking me. Isn't this sad? This is what I would say. I mean, you want my answer would be none, but the answer out of the three that I would probably pick right now, I personally, and I'm going to get a lot of dissenters on this, I'd go with Russ. I'd go with Russ. I think he kind of fits what they do, at least offensively, now that they have DK Metcalf. Yeah. If you're going to have DK Metcalf and George Pickens, just moonball away. Just build the whole play on a moonball.
This is where I'm at, Nick. Like, look, I get it. There's the whole thing is that, Russ, people don't like him as much right now, and they were trying to move on. They were trying to get Justin Fields, and it didn't work. And I was even on board. I said, hey, go get Justin Fields. $15 million a year. Apparently $20 million a year. That was with the Jets, and $30 million guaranteed. The Steelers weren't going to do that. And I said, I made a point on yesterday's episode. The point of getting a quarterback is not to overpay for a mid-level quarterback so that you can build out the rest of your roster. But if you can't get that guy, the person at the mid-level price, and you still end up getting another mid-level guy, then you still missed out on your first option in getting Justin Fields. So now the question is, who can they get? And I'm with you. Like, I personally, it sounds like there's a lot of Aaron Rodgers, arrows pointing his way. Maybe but I'm with you. I don't get why Russell Wilson, if you missed out on Justin Fields, Russell Wilson is the next best option. I'm sorry. And I know there's some people out there that are Aaron Rodgers truthers, but that guy, literally, the Jets were an up-and-coming franchise. They had a young coach. They had a defense. They had a run game. They had weapons, and he tore it apart in less than a year. They were torn to shambles, and now everything's gone, and everything the Jets thought they were building towards is in the wind. And now they're trying to get Justin Fields, and they overpaid for Justin Fields. I think they really did. So instead of going and getting that guy or Daniel Jones, who objectively sucks, bring back Russell Wilson. I know that he's got beef with Arthur Smith. I know that there's probably work that out. Be professionals, because the thing that he did for you well last year was when he had protection and he had a run game, he could make the deep ball work, and he can make a couple big throws. Now he will have two legitimate deep threats, two of the best deep threats in the NFL. And like you said, moonball away with Russell Wilson. Just be like, you know what? Hey, we're setting up, one-on-one opportunities on each side of the field. And I said this last night when they traded for DK Metcalf. you can literally just line up both of those guys. One's the Z, one's the X, on opposite sides of the field, on opposite sidelines. And when they're out there, it's like daring the defense to not go too deep safeties, because you're saying, okay, have your corners in one-on-one coverage and see what happens. And if they roll with two deep safeties, all of a sudden that means 7 guys are in the box. You get a lighter box, you get a chance to run the ball, and then you can play the pace that works better for you. And then I think that's there. And then with Russell Wilson, you don't have the Pat McAfee show. You don't have the craziness that is Aaron Rodgers, and you don't have mid-season press conferences where Aaron Rodgers is going to throw everyone under the bus as soon as he messes up and he tries to say it's not his fault, which is what he's done for the past several years. I do not think that is the right move if they go that direction.
All right, so let's play devil's advocate. Why would they sign Aaron Rodgers? Okay, the arm talent's still there. You know, you look at the tape last year, he still makes beautiful throws. He still has touches of elite ball placement. We know Aaron Rodgers has unreal arm talent. It's not quite what it was when he was 30, but it's still really good. Okay, that's a good part of it. 2, he's a very smart, cerebral quarterback. So he's a guy that can set protections, do different things like that. Why would you not, in terms of football reasoning, do it? He can't move.
Yeah.
Like maybe another
year. If you think Russ can't move, he literally can't move.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is, now let's see, maybe another year, if they do sign him, maybe another year off the Achilles allows him to gain a little bit of it back. But right now, when you look at his tape, when you look at Aaron Rodgers' tape, it's all out of the gun. He really can't do a bunch of under center things. It's kind of like if you watch that Atlanta offense last year with Kirk Cousins, they had to run pistol and shotgun only, right? You got to go under center nowadays in the NFL because of what under center formations do. And we know Arthur Smith's offense goes under center like 30% of the time. Like you have to be able to go under center in Arthur Smith's offense to make this thing work. Arthur Smith uses motion. Historically speaking, Aaron Rodgers hates motion. So if you want pre-snap motion, that's not going to be in the offense with Aaron Rodgers there. And it just takes out a big chunk of the playbook to me where it's kind of hard. And I think if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're going to just have to redo the entire offense. You're going to run a lot of 11 personnel out of spread looks, I feel like. A lot of less of the condensed 12 personnel stuff we've seen from Arthur Smith and even last year. It's just going to be – it's an odd fit, right? It's a conglomeration
Very odd fit
of kind of ideas. So, you know, I think the football side of the Aaron Rodgers stuff is a little odd. I do. And, you know, I understand. I think the kind of stats that Aaron Rodgers put out last year, the 28 touchdowns to 11 picks, his last 10 games, I believe, 18 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. They're shiny. They're nice. They're sterling. You like that. Russ also had 16 touchdowns to 5 picks. If you want to make that, that's a good stat line, right? I mean, I feel like when we talk about good veteran stat lines, I feel like I'm just teleported back to last year when we were talking about Russ coming over from Denver, right? And those stat lines, those box score stat lines don't always tell the whole story. So there is buyer beware here with Aaron Rodgers, and I just kind of wanted to explain why I think there is some buyer beware there with Aaron Rodgers. Russ has his own issues. I'm sure, you know, we have talked about those and how he's so moonball reliant that it's hard to build the entire offense out of it. But the personnel that they've built gives them a chance to do that. And the too high stuff that they're going to see, theoretically, if it works out by seeing that too high, it's going to make it easier to run the football. So you have at least an idea to me if you have Russell Wilson of, oh, this is how we can work, right? We can work out of moonballs. They can go into too high, and those too high shells theoretically will allow you to run the football a little bit better. You can force them out of that, and then you go those too high looks or the one high looks where you can get the one-on-ones down the sideline.
I can see a point there. I can see that that there being things there. I really think that the again, I know the season didn't end well with Russell Wilson. You played a gauntlet of a schedule, but also the offensive line fell apart. And I think if the offensive line falls apart with Aaron Rodgers, he's not even finishing the game. Russell Wilson isn't, the same mobile threat that he was when he was in his prime, but he could still at least move. And that's something that he has on his side. And I think that especially if you can get this guy for a reasonable amount, not overpay, and you have him for the next 2 years, it gives you a chance to go and trade up and go get your guy next year. Because again, that's always been the point. this year was not about finding the franchise quarterback. Justin Fields was not the future. He was the bridge that was the most ideal in a lot of our opinions, right? And you didn't get him. And that's why I'm like, I don't think it's the end of the world that they didn't get Justin Fields. But I do think that, and we talking about in a sec here, because they didn't get Justin Fields, and there are a lot of players that they didn't get in free agency that I thought they would have a really good chance at. Now I do have questions about what's going to happen and what is their priority moving forward. Let's talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Nick Farabaugh, Penn Live. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we'll remind you this show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with Betterhelp, you can save up to 50% per session. Betterhelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. You should treat therapy like self-care. We spend money on gym memberships and healthy food. Why not invest in your mental health well-being too? Therapy isn't just for tough times. It's a great tool for learning coping skills and setting boundaries. BetterHelp makes it easy to fit therapy into your schedule, whether you're working, parenting, or always on the go. You don't have to go through a major crisis to benefit from therapy. Sometimes it's just about having someone to talk to. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter here with Nick Farabaugh. Nick, let's talk about the guys they did. Well, the one guy they did sign, Malik Harrison, linebacker from the Ravens, looking like a thumper type linebacker who can also double on special teams. You posted this. The theory is that maybe he can play the Landon Roberts role while also playing the Tyler Matakevich role. Your quick thoughts on the decision to sign him.
I mean, I don't know. Again, I think he's a two-role kind of guy in one roster spot. It gives him another spot roster flexibility. I know the Steelers value that so much. I feel like that's what this is. But, I mean, Landon Roberts, 1 year, $3 million to the Raiders. I mean, I personally would have rather have done that deal.
Yep.
I understand why they're doing it. Feels like to me maybe that they're going to give Harrison an opportunity to compete with Cole Holcomb. I think Holcomb probably has a path to being the LB3. I mean, if Harrison's an LB4, I mean, that's an expensive LB4 for special teams roles. But that's kind of, I think, where this is. So, I don't know. I mean, the tape on Malik Harrison it's tough. I think he's a hard-nosed player. I think he's a 2000s thumper, downhill run stuffer, not good in space. But, hey, he brings special teams acumen. So, I'm assuming that's their thought process behind it. But I really would have rather just brought back Landon Roberts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Landon was a good leader, a great locker room guy, a talented linebacker who played his role very well and knew what it was. And you need guys like that. I'm not so sure about this move either. But let's talk about Darius Slay, because here's the thing. Darius Slay is not finalized. It was reported that he's going to the Steelers, but he still hasn't even been officially cut by the Eagles yet, and the Steelers haven't necessarily gotten him to sign anything yet. So technically, he could go back to the Eagles or just decide, I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, he could. I mean, listen, this is another one where he's a good player. I think Darius Slay played really well this year, but he's 34. I mean, I feel like I've done this song and dance before. Did we not just do this with Patrick Peterson?
Exactly.
Listen, Darius Slay is better than where Patrick Peterson was when they signed him. He's got more left in the tank. He's got that going for him. But he's also kind of doing what Patrick Peterson did, which was Patrick Peterson came from a very heavy quarter scheme where it was zone, 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 zone. Darius Slay played a ton of zone in that Fangio scheme last year. I don't know why the Steelers kind of keep targeting these off-man quarters types when they play so much cover 3. It's weird. Slay's going to play way more man coverage. So is the speed still there? I mean, there's flashes of it. Is he just going to fall off a cliff? I mean, you never know, right? When you are 34 years old at cornerback, that's not a position that these guys typically play very long for. It can happen any year. So it's a risky signing. I like the player. I like the ball hawk production. If Slay is still very good, cool. It's a good signing, but it's very risky when this deal was reported, Chris. Charvarius Ward wasn't signed. Byron Murphy wasn't signed.
Yep.
I mean, there's still names out there.
All those made sense.
So
all those guys made sense.
So I don't know. It feels like a Band-Aid to a long-term issue that could have been addressed this year. The only rationale behind this that I will say is this, to me, tells you they are way higher on Corey Trice than you ever thought they were. They like Corey Trice. And you can argue if they should or not, but that's what you should read from this for sure, because Corey Trice has been injured a lot, but when he has played, he's looked good. He gave Jamar Chase a good – he really competed with Jamar Chase. Obviously, Jamar Chase won that because he was in man coverage against the second best or best receiver in football, however you kind of look at that. But they really like Corey Trice. That's got to be what the rationale is for this one.
I think maybe that's something there. But, Nick, I'm right with you. I have to admit, I feel like yesterday, I felt like when you looked at, or I guess, 2 days ago, if you're listening to this show or watching the show on Tuesday, when they got DK Metcalf, I was like, okay, they made their aggressive play. So they set the stage for them to go do stuff. Now they can go make other aggressive plays. That hasn't happened. And I'm curious to see what their plan is right now, because now Charvarius Ward gone, Carlton Davis gone, Byron Murphy gone. Those were the top corners. Even Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs is gone. So, like, all the guys that I thought were reasonable vet corners that you could sign to pair with Joey Porter Jr. and make your secondary locked up next year, those guys are off the table. And you don't have a second-round pick, so it's going to be that much harder to find anybody that's going to be able to play corner this upcoming season. I guess, like you said, Corey Trice is just that ready to go. And sure, there's Asante Samuel still out there. There's still options. It's not like there's nobody out there in free agency right now, but I don't see what's going on there. I think maybe, there's guys, they could still sign some defensive linemen. Jonathan Allen's still available. He got cut from the Commanders, and maybe that can help you out a little bit. But Nick, I'm a little perplexed to see what is the plan right now, because the plan to me seemed obvious. Get your quarterback. Don't pay too much for him. Get a corner, get a D lineman, get a couple, strategical pieces for not that expensive, and then get ready for the draft, load up at D tackle, get a receiver in the second round, and then you're cooking. Well, now there's the second round pick's gone. You got DK Metcalf. So, okay, maybe get like a corner or another player that you need in the third round, maybe a running back in the third round. Now, I don't know what the overall plan is from here, and maybe it's going to take some time to figure out. But I'm perplexed.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, it certainly feels like they need to make sure that Slay deal is locked up and done, because of the guys that are gone. They can't be left having a hole at outside corner.
No,
I would definitely explore the slot options. There's a few slot corners still out there. Mike Hilton's still out there. You mentioned, I think Asante Samuel Jr. is a really good play for them right now, because I actually think if they sign Asante Samuel Jr. to a multi-year deal, that is a long-term play in and of itself. He can play the slot this year, and then when Slay leaves next year, could theoretically shift back out because he's played outside and inside. So that could work. I can understand that thought process. But they haven't made a splash. I mean, they could make a splash at guard even. I mean, there were plays out there to make splashes at guard. There are still a few plays out there. They could get a guy like Will Fries if they wanted to. But there's just not a lot of the premium talent went off the board very quickly this year.
Yep.
There were a few deals. I mean, I understand maybe you didn't want to pay Carlton Davis, Charvarius Ward $20 million a year, but DJ Reed for 16, I would have been all over that personally. Me. I think that's a really good deal for him. Paulson Adebo for 18. Again, that's not bad. There were just really good deals that I feel like the Steelers should have been all over. It's kind of setting the stage to where you almost kind of are looking at this year. It's kind of a weird transitional year almost now, right? Where that Slay contract's probably going to be a 1-year deal. It'll be off the books. The quarterback deal, probably might be a 1-year deal off the books, where we're going to be kind of there in 26, sitting there and being like, they're going to have the most cap space again that they've ever had. And we might be talking about the same thing we were talking this year, where let's see what they can do aggressively. Because right now it just feels like they're a little tentative. We'll see. There's still plays they can make. At corner, for example, they could trade for Jair Alexander. That could definitely happen.
Okay.
At D-line, I'm sure there's a few guys that we may not even know of that are out there. I mean, there's always surprise trade candidates. Did anyone expect Laramie Tunsil to get traded today? I did not expect that.
I did not either. That was wild.
So, I mean, maybe there's something there to that, but we'll see. But the Steelers are going to definitely have to use the cap space somewhere and make an aggressive play.
Yeah, that's my thing, man. Like, they have the cap space. This was supposed to be the offseason to be a little bit more of an aggressor. And look, there's still players out there. Jonathan Allen's still out there. You can sign him to a decent deal. Javon Hargrave's still out there. You can get, different guys, and there's different things you can do. And there's also trades available. Because that's the other thing. Like you're saying, this time last year, well, I guess this time last year, technically things were going. But like last year, going into March, we all thought the Steelers, well, they got Kenny Pickett, and they're just going to need to work around that. And then, boom, explosion, and Kenny Pickett's gone. And Mason Rudolph's gone, and it's a whole new quarterback room. And so maybe Khan is just gearing up to make a run like that, where there's some big moves made that go along with DK Metcalf. But to me, I am one person who I calm down people who want to ring the alarm bells a lot. The people who want to panic and go crazy. I am less inclined to hit the calm button right now for the Steelers, because I do not see, I usually feel like I have a general sense of what direction they're going, what they're doing. It's based off of things that I've heard, but also what I'm seeing just with my own eyes. And right now, I have to say, based off of how things have gone on Monday, I'm not in that position right now where I'm like, oh yeah, they gotta do something. They gotta make some moves that show like, okay, there's the structure for what the team they want to be is attainable.
Yeah, and I mean, what we talked about all this year was the idea of building up the team, right?
Yep.
Around whatever quarterback would be there. And it made a lot of sense because you can kind of build a future for it. This year, you may be understood. You're not a Super Bowl contender, but next year, you make that leap towards a quarterback, you could find that guy. I thought we were on that track with DK Metcalf. It made a lot of sense, right?
Yep.
That timeline felt right. But without making a big move at corner, without making a move at defensive lineman, while releasing Larry Ogunjobi, by the way, so they created a bigger hole. They need 2 defensive linemen because they only have 4 on the roster right now.
Good point.
So they need a depth guy and a start. So they got to make moves here, man. They can't go into the draft not having a slot corner, for example. They can't go into the draft not having at least one of those defensive linemen. They can't go into the draft with that because they got to draft a running back. Now, with one of these vets, you feel like you at least need a quarterback to have some young guy that you can at least turn to if things go bad. Like, there are plays you need in the draft. And so you have to fill these voids in. There are guys still out there to make those plays with, but right now it feels very static. To be perfectly blunt with you, Chris, I think the best way to say it feels directionless. I just don't know where they're going.
I feel you on that because I don't know where they're going, and you and I are 2 guys that I think in general, we're usually pretty in tune with what's going on, or at least what the plan is right now. So hey. Maybe we just gotta wait and see. Maybe there's a play. Then hey, you mentioned like Jair Alexander. Trades are hard to see unless like which players are on the chopping block and things like that. But we'll keep an eye on what things go on there. But I want to talk about another narrative, or not a narrative, but a thing that the Steelers are doing right now, and that could be working in their favor, and that's comp picks. And I want to talk about how that may play into their current strategy, how they're operating, and how that could play into their future strategy for getting the guy they want next year. We'll discuss all of that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter and Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, this show is also brought to you by TurboTax. TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. But now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. As an expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com, only available with TurboTax Live full service real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, whereas the Steelers didn't go out and get a whole bunch of guys, a lot of people went and got them some Steelers. They hit free agency. Dan Moore, one of the biggest ones. The Tennessee Titans went and signed him to a massive contract. A 4-year, $82 million. That's more than $20 million a year. $50 million of that guaranteed. I know, a lot of Steelers fans were like, wait, for real? And listen, I knew Dan Moore was going to command some money in the market because he's a 4-year starting left tackle, and that does command some things. But my goodness, that is a pay. Good for Dan. Great for Dan. Great way to get your money, man. But I didn't see that coming. And then Najee Harris does get a 1-year, $9.5 million contract to play for the Chargers. Justin Fields with his money, getting his money from the Jets. Those three alone, Nick, players that the Steelers let hit free agency and got paid. How does that work in their favor to get comp picks again? But that's not for this year's draft. That's for the 2026 draft.
Yeah, you didn't even mention James Daniels or Dante Jackson. Both those guys will slot in with comps too.
Boom.
And then if Russell Wilson doesn't come back, that's another comp pick. So, I mean, they're going to be swimming in these things. And the moves they've made or a signal to be made, if Slay is signed, if Rodgers is signed, the Metcalf trade, all of those aren't going to count towards the comp formula. The Steelers are really doing a thing here. And this is, I guess, if you are wanting to talk yourself into there is a direction here and there's a thought process behind this. This is where I would maybe point to, is saying the Steelers are doing that on purpose. Because why have we talked about it? 2026 is the year they would probably go for their quarterback, right? If you get all these comp picks, that Moore contract might be a third. Fields is going to be a fourth. If you assume Russ is going to get around 20, another fourth. So you're going to have a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, et cetera, just popping in and out. That's trade ammo next year for when you want to go up.
Absolutely.
Because, let's be real. The Steelers aren't going to be 5-12. They're not going to be 3-14. They're probably going to be 10-7, 9-8, 11-6, something around there. They're probably going to pick around the 20th pick in the draft. And so they're going to need the ammo to go up and get their guy if they want to. That could be a long-term thought process by Omar Khan. I could see that. And listen, it makes a lot of sense if that's your view, where you're kind of viewing it 2025 and saying, listen, our quarterback situation, it's going to be subpar. We're going to try and add some talent. The second part of that is incredibly important. We need to see them add the talent to go with it. But I can kind of see the thought process there. So if you're looking, I think, for something that says, okay, the Steelers are thinking here and there's a plan and there's a direction that they want to go, this comp pick thing makes some sense because it absolutely could give them some ammo in the trade market next year if they want to go get a quarterback.
That's where I'm at with the comp picks thing, and it's interesting the strategy of who they've signed so far. And again, Jonathan Allen would count that. He got cut by the Commanders. A Cooper Kupp, if he gets cut, he could count for that. Aaron Rodgers, like you said, he could count for that. There'd be all sorts of ways to get comp picks and rattle up. Because remember, and I think this is why we're pointing out that the Steelers aren't signing guys. The way comp picks are determined, it's not just the players you lose to free agency that you don't resign. It's the players you get in free agency as unrestricted free agents. And when you compare those, that's what it leads to the formula that says you get, 2 third-round comp picks or whatever it is that you can get. So I'm with you. I think that's certainly part of the plan that the Steelers, those may not be the picks that they trade up with, but they can be the picks that give them the comfort to say, hey, you know what? We're trading up into the first round to get this quarterback that we really like, that we think is the future, but we have these third-round comp picks sitting around where that's going to help us, get some, have something up our sleeve and be able to get some mid-round guys just so we can have them on our roster.
Yeah, it's shrewd. Good teams, generally, good general managers love these comp picks. They usually are kind of a way for good teams to load up and make those types of moves. For example, the Ravens are notorious for farming comp picks. Usually it's for teams that really draft and develop really well. And so the Steelers this year are kind of reaping these benefits. Another note, if a guy like Aaron Rodgers, for example, he gets cut by a team, those guys do not count towards the comp formula for the Steelers. So they can sign those and have no penalty towards our comp pick formula. So same thing with Slay. Jair Alexander would be the same way. You mentioned Kupp. Javon Hargrave would be the same way if they went after him. There's a few names there that would make sense from that perspective. And so this comp pick flexibility, the Steelers haven't really had that in a long time. I think, last time I could think of them having that type of flexibility to go up and make that type of move, 2019 when they traded Antonio Brown? That sounds about right to me.
Exactly.
So I think that's going to give them the ability to say, hey, we got picks still. We can make that move up the board and still not neglect all your needs next year when you need those picks. It all makes sense. The logic there is sound. That's good process as a general manager. Now, to buy in fully to it, let's see the other parts of the puzzle cinch in.
Yeah, I think the big thing is there's still so many moving parts right now to the Steelers. They have to figure these things out. Will they figure these things out? They got to eventually. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to follow here moving forward, is how do they handle the quarterback situation, but how do they handle all these situations, and how do they feel the team that's going to make them, get to keep them as a playoff appearing team moving forward. So we'll keep you up to date with all of those developments here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Nick, thank you so much for joining me. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, X at Farabaugh FB. Same thing on Blue Sky as well. Make sure to read the stuff over PennLive.com and check out the YouTube channel Steelers on Penn Live.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same handle everywhere, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday. We're back tomorrow with more on your Steelers. Maybe they've made a move. Stay tuned. We'll also have an emergency episode when big things happen. We'll keep it all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.